get going. First of all, thanks for showing up. And if you didn't know, there was some kind of a bomb threat made online. The police figured out it was probably from somewhere out of the country. It was a hoax. Nothing but maybe some of the, I've had people contact me that they didn't feel safe coming to campus. I said, well, that's fine. We record this, so that's it. But I didn't hear about it till later, till I got here. So is it safe? Well, it's fine. So I guess it was posted online. Somebody, anyway. So we're here. We have all the assignments are extended until next Tuesday. Is that right? Okay, because that was my intention. So you can keep working on those. We have no new content tonight. So let's just kind of look at our pacing calendar, get our place, and primarily what I'm going to do is share where all the resources are. So we're into the review. The test specifically covers 11.4 to 11.6. So we did have 11.3, the product and quotient rule, but it wasn't really heavily on the last one, and it won't be heavily specifically on this one. However, we will probably have a chain rule that also involves one or the two of the others. So you'll need to know how to do a product rule and a chain rule, although there won't be a separate question that just does that. Okay. And I was talking to someone earlier, so basically chapter 11 through 11.6, those are all our techniques for taking derivatives. Those are things you want to have a good foundation on. Okay, so before you move into 12, so if you're struggling with 12, you might want to focus first on the stuff in chapter 11, because that's going to be the nuts and bolts of doing it. Once we get into chapter 12, those are more conceptual type things, and they're applications of the techniques that we use. So specific applications. So you're going to be using the techniques you learned in chapter 11. Again, 12.5 related rates is specifically tied to 11.6. Maximum minimums are derivatives. Higher order derivatives are there too. And then elasticity that we did on Tuesday is again another application, really just a formula. You've got to be able to take a derivative and then use that formula to go forward. Now, so that's our overview. Let me show you the latest. This afternoon, I think it was, maybe it was this morning, I did a summary and review for test 2. So I also posted an announcement, so maybe you saw that. If you didn't, you can go to the announcements, and I make reference to this summary. It doesn't seem like a lot, but what I did is I took the review notes, and this is actually the same notes that have always been posted. There's videos for each of the questions on this, but the thing that this one does is it highlights ones that I say, know how to do these. If you know how to do these, you're going to be okay. The other ones are still good practice, so I'm not saying don't do those, but do the highlighted ones first to kind of make sure that and if you understand those, you'll see ones on the test. Because what I did is I'll be honest, I looked at the test and I looked at the review and I said, this one's really going to help you, okay? And I'm going to talk about one that, there was one that was on the test that isn't exactly like this, but it's similar, so I'm going to go over that one and I say, well, if it was phrased this way, this is how we're going to approach it. Because because a lot of times math teachers, to them, oh, let's just change it and do it. There's one or two ways to do things, so let's do it this way. Let's teach you this way, and then on the test we'll put this way, and we'll see if you understand it. Well, for a student coming through, that looks like it's something completely new, unless you get the connection. So that's all I'm doing, is I'm providing the connection between the test question and the practice test, because I'll be honest, I overlooked it because of the way the question was asked. And I got back, oh wait, there's not actually two elasticity questions. There's really only one elasticity question. The other is actually a maximum minimum question, and I didn't realize it because of how it was asked in the practice. But when I looked at anyway, we'll get to that specific one, okay? But if you go through and you work these highlighted ones, and again, I tried to get it down where it's not over, because just work them all and you'll be fine, but make sure you know these highlighted ones, because there's going to be, again, ones similar to these. And so I narrow it down. Again, it's good practice to the other ones, but at least, you know, this one's going to have a product rule in it, right? Because of these being multiplied. And then there's going to be a dy dx over here, dy dx over here. So we've got to get them on the side and bring them out. So it's one of the more it's actually one of the more complicated ones. And if you can do that one, you'll be fine on the test, the one that the test is going to give you. But it's also an indication, if I've highlighted it, it's because there's one like that, okay? And, you know, while you could say, oh, I'll just guess on that one or something, there is a true-false portion. And again, you could do either one of these, but it gives a graph, and it asks these kind of questions, but in a true-false format. And I think there was maybe 5 parts to it. So there's a few more true-false questions, but it's all in reference to a graph and about where, you know, about if this is a minimum or a maximum or a relative minimum or absolute max. So it asks those kind of things in a true-false. All you have to answer is true-false, but go over that and you'll be fine. Okay. And again, if you work both of them, it's even better. But that's what I'll tell you. There's, you know, that true-false question. There's a graph and a bunch of questions about the graph of concave up, concave down. What is the value of the second derivative, right? Because if second derivative is positive, what do we have? We're happy. Positive things make us happy, so we have a smile. That's what a concave up looks like. If the second derivative is negative, it makes us frown. So we got that kind of thing going on. So kind of go through those kind of things. And again, I'm going to show you, I've got solution videos where I actually work through each of these. And at the beginning of those videos, I do like for 12.1, I take the sort of important concepts from the PowerPoints that I was doing. So I do a quick summary, and then I get into the questions. So you might say, oh, he's going to give this whole lecture. I just do a brief lecture, and then I get into the questions. So if you just want the questions, fast forward to that part and look at the question solution. If you want some background, stay at the front part, and I'll give a little bit of background on it. Okay, so those are all there. And again, it's much more than I could do in one night. And I want to do it in a way that you can select what you need. Some of you might need more in depth on, 12.1. It's there. And then there's some solutions as well. Some of you might just need to look at a few solutions and where you're going off. Okay, so see, I said skip a lot of this. And again, I chose this one because it's a little bit more complicated, and and again, I try to choose ones that are going to help you with the test. So if it was more, an e to the x type thing, it's not that this one isn't helpful. It's just that this one, make sure you know how to do 9. Okay. And again, it's got an interval. So remember, this is about critical points, max and mins. Remember, critical points are where the first derivative is 0, but we also have to look at endpoints because they could be a minimum or maximum as well. Okay, and again, there's a solution video for each of these. Let's see, what else do we get down here, and again, with these question ones, there are, because there's these 2 square things, there's some that's going to be, by doing both of these you'll be fine. This is the one, this is the one I'm going to come back to and pinpoint a little bit how, because it's asked similar to this, but they set the equation up a little differently, and I want you to be able to make that connection. Okay, so we'll come back to 17 specifically. Again, this kind of thing, make sure you're able to go through this as higher order derivatives. What does a second derivative being positive or negative mean? Concave up, concave down, and we can use those. On through this one, what is this? This is still, okay, so this is a second derivative one. So if we've got a position function, second derivative is going to give us acceleration. We have to remember that velocity, or what sometimes we call speed, directed speed, velocity is that first derivative, second derivative is acceleration. So be able to work with something like this. related rates. Here's one dealing with a spherical, so there's one with a sphere type thing. Be able to deal with that. And finally, elasticity. I pulled out two of them. And again, be able to kind of work through both of those. And there is one of the open answer or open, I'll call them essay type questions where it will give you, it will ask about elasticity, but it will also give you the formula for the elasticity. So you don't have to memorize it, but you'll be using it, okay? And again, here they don't give it to you, but on the test we do give it to you. Okay, so the test consists of 6 questions, multiple choice. So you got the question, all you gotta do is, we give you the right answer, we just give you 4 wrong answers that look like they might be right answers, right? So you gotta choose that right one. You don't have to show any work, you just have to circle the right one, and then there's a little answer key to put it all in there, A, B, C, D, E, whatever. Okay, so there's 6 of those. There's one true false, but again, that's with a graph, and there's multiple true false questions about that graph, second derivative, so that part's there. Then there's 4, so 8, 9, 10, 11, oh, that's 5, 8 to 12. So there's 5 sort of what I call essay questions that are kind of like this, where you're expected to put in your work. So if it requires a derivative, show the derivative. Now, that question might be, what's the value of the derivative at a point? Yes, we want to know that, but if you had to take the derivative to get there, we want you to show that. Okay. So very similar to that first test as far as structure. Let's hit on these highlighted ones, and I'm going to come back to that one, but I want to show you. Go back, and I think in the announcement I actually made links to each of these things. So so here's the summary for the test. Down here's the test 2 review materials. So there's a lot of stuff here. It's a newer but similar one. I looked it over. It's so similar. Actually, it's got fewer things than the old review does. Yes.
Could you? I don't know if you know how to do this or if you're able to do this, but right now when I go into grades and I test out a grade for the test, it's set to 0, so it doesn't affect my total grade.
Mm-hmm.
I like to go in there and like mess with it and see what grade I need for whatever, to keep whatever letter grade. Would you be able to make it equal to 100 or whatever it's equal to, so that I can go in there and see what I need?
Which item?
The test.
Oh, the test itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
it's
appropriate.
It's set to 0 right now. So
Okay.
if I put it in like
You
50
got right.
100, it's like,
Then it's extra
no
credit.
plus.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I probably should do that with the future ones, because you might want to say, well, what if I do this? Good idea. Thank you. Definitely, I'll do that. So the new but similar one, I guess I just posted it because they gave it to us. But in reviewing the test, everything you need to know is right on this one. And again, the newer ones seem to have actually fewer rather than more. I didn't see anything that was on the new one that would be anything different. So one of the important things is the study guide video solutions. So here's 11, 4, 5, and 6. So again, those are going to be the skill-based stuff that you need. And when you click on here, I've got videos. Again, this is from a previous class, but as we, let's see, let me turn the volume off. You can make it full screen if you want. So notice I give a sort of a review of the concepts, but it's 13 minutes in total. If you fast forward far enough, I actually start working through. Now the numbers don't always match up with what's on the newer version that I have, but the questions are the same. I did, at least the ones I looked at, they're the same. So I go through and work each of them. Now this was maybe not one of the highlighted ones and you wanted to do something else. Again, fast forward, I sort of work them in order as we go through here, and you can just kind of, I guess sometimes faster than others, but I will get through all of them. And again, you can fast forward to the ones that you need. There's also an answer key, which provides provides the answer plus sometimes how to do it. So that's what I would encourage you to do on each of those. So each of those have a solution already done. And there's, the 11s, and there's also, what's this? It's a PDF. What did I do here? I guess I took some screenshots. So if you just want, maybe you're not getting quite the right answer and you just don't want to watch the video, but you just kind of want to get to it, I've got some screenshots here too that just kind of give the whole solution. Oh, I forgot out that negative or something. That might just be something as simple as that. But these are here. So again, your resources, use what works for you. And then the same thing happens for the applications. Again, review materials from a prior course, but they still work. So here's all the 12.1 to 12.6. So these will be all the applications. And again, they're the same. I do a sort of mini lecture for maybe 5 minutes or so where I go over the concepts and then I start working the test review questions. You go to where you need to go, listen to what you need to go, but you could go through each of them. Okay, and that's what I would suggest doing over this next weekend, getting ready for Tuesday. And if you do it, again, if you look at the highlighted ones, again, nothing else, but at least the highlighted ones, you will know, you'll come to the test and you'll see, oh yeah, I saw something very similar to this. Numbers are a little bit different, but the process is going to be the same. Okay, so while we're at it, let me finish that one, and then I'll open it up to see if there's any other questions, or if you want to just kind of work on things independently and ask some questions. But let me get this one. What was it? It was 17 something. And I think it's a pretty important concept too, business-wise. So this is 17. And I'm just going to give myself some room here. Okay, so you can see why it's got this Q for quantity. So this is a worldwide annual sale of a product was projected to be approximately Q equals that. Million units at a selling price of P dollars. So if you give me the dollars, we can figure out how many are sold, right? So that would maybe kind of get you thinking of elasticity of demand because of the way it's set up. The one in the test, there's another way, but notice what the question is about: what is the largest projected annual revenue, right? So this is a question about which that's what the elasticity of demand. Remember, if we get it to be elastic at, or not, if we get it, the elasticity function equal to 1, then that is also going to maximize revenue. So I started working through this to see if it would work both ways, and it does. Okay, so I could use this and come up with, I could use the elasticity of demand, but I could also do this without that. And this particular question is sort of phrased that way. So first of all, though, the question is not phrased this way. On the test, what they're going to give you is that the price is equal to some function of the quantity. So if I make this quantity, that will give us the price. And notice I could do that. Basically what they did is they replaced Q with an X variable, and then they solved for P. So I can work this one that way. So if we solve for P, we're going to get that P is equal to negative 4,220, right? Because that comes over with, actually X minus 4,220 divided by negative 10. Okay, so that it's really the same function, but they have it phrased differently. That if you know the quantity, you now get the price that you're supposed to sell it at. If you want to sell this many, this is your price. So that's how it's phrased, and then it asks for you to maximize revenue. So what is revenue? Revenue is a function that if you have the price and you have how many you sold, if you multiply those together, that's revenue, right? I sell this backpack for $10 and I sold 100 of them, 100 times 10, my revenue was 1,000? Okay. I tried to make the math simple so I wouldn't mess it up. So 1,000, right? Doesn't mean I made any money. I might not have made any profit, but I did make revenue. Actually, I think I paid 35 for it, but anyway, $10. Does that make sense? Okay, so in terms of this equation, what does that mean? Well, this is the price. What is the quantity? X is the quantity in this one. So we need to take X times P, but P is a function of X, right? So our revenue function that we actually end up using is X times X minus 4,200 over negative 10. Distribute the X through, and so we get a X squared minus 4,220X. Actually, I'm going to divide, over negative 10. I'm going to make it a little simpler. So this is X squared over 10. I'm going to put the negative up here so that we see it's a negative X squared, right? It's a negative quadratic. It's going to have a maximum, right? And then this part, negative and negative will make it positive. 10 goes into 4,200. It's 422x. And so basically we can start with this, but just remember it's basically going to be quantity times price. And then this function, we just need to maximize. Okay, you could just graph, if this is, again, if it's a multiple choice, it doesn't matter how you do it. You could just graph it and find the vertex, right? And then that will tell you, and again, that gives you the X value. Once you plug that in, the Y value would be, because this is now a revenue function, the Y value would be the revenue, right? The other way we could do this is we could take the derivative of the revenue, right? And set that equal to 0. That tells us what X value gives us a maximum. So we take its derivative 2, so we get negative 2x over 10. This becomes plus 422. If we solve that where it's equal to 0, we'll find what X value, and X is now quantity, how many, what X value gives us that slope of 0, which means we're at the top of the mountain. Then we would have to go back and plug it in and get it, right? So if this was a show your work type thing, we want to see this, that you did this. We don't want to see that you used just strictly algebra. You looked at the graph and I graphed it and I found the vertex, even though that might be what you did first to get the answer, because actually that's the easiest way to do it, right? It gives you both the X and the Y. This one, we got to do this stuff, solve for X. That gives us the X value, but the answer is asking what's the revenue. I got to go back, plug it in to get the revenue. Okay. But as you do this one, maybe work it both ways. I mean, that's really what it is it's just quantity times price. So we could do it with a Q in here as well, that revenue equals Q times P. But I just wanted you to see that because they phrased it that way in the question, and sometimes just the difference between having it listed as an X and having it listed as a Q they're visually very different. And I know it throws me off. So if I just want you to see that X, and they say X is a quantity sold. So we could replace it by Q. So yes.
So once we find the quantity, then we would put the quantity back into the R prime or the
No,
R function?
to the R function. R prime just tells us, remember, that tells us where the rate is a maximum, because we set it equal to 0.
Right.
When to find the actual revenue, we've got to go back to the original, the revenue function, not the revenue prime. Good question. So, and that's kind of what I'd like to see, that's the lesson I want you to get, is that we've got these two levels. It's just that on the practice they give it to you this way, on the test they give it this way, and what I see happening is you actually understand the concept because you've done it here, but now that they've changed the way they present it, it even got me thinking this is an elasticity question when it really wasn't.
So do you plug it in the P equals X minus 4,222 divided by 10? Or do
Yeah.
you plug it in
Well,
the one in the question? Because that
either this one here, this is just algebra, this is the same thing as this one. So these have just been algebra. So you could put it into either one of these, right? It would give you this, it will give you the same value if you put it in here or if you put it in over here.
Okay, but not the one that's in the question, right? The equation?
Right,
Okay.
because that is just give me the price, I give you the quantity. That's not revenue yet.
Okay.
So yeah, so you got to remember, yeah. So remember, a lot of times they don't give us that, and sometimes they do that with profit. And again, this is what they're focusing on now. But sometimes they'll ask about profit, but they don't give us. They give us the cost function and the revenue function. We got to make the profit function. And I think that's that threw a few of you off. There is that you've got to there's this difference of cost, revenue, and profit, and it's so easy to confuse revenue and profit because they're both money coming in, but profit is the money, is the revenue that's left over after the costs have been subtracted, right? Profit and revenue are not the same unless there was no cost to making things. But that's a typical thing I see. It's a typical thing I will confuse as well. Okay. I have to go a little bit further. So we subtract 422, so we get negative. So this is 2 divided by 10, so that's going to be x over 5. We'll get a negative 422 here. Multiply both sides by negative 5. We should get that x is 5 times that is 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. 10, carry the 1. 20, 30, no, 21. Did you get that? Okay. And so then we take this and we plug it back into here, right? So we're going to say that the revenue, the actual revenue. So this is how many we should make because that's how many we're going to be able to sell. We never found the price. We could do that, but they didn't ask for that. They only asked for the revenue. So then we put this 2100. So we're going to get negative 2100 squared, and make sure that that negative's on the outside, divided by 10 plus 422 times 2100, and whatever that equals. What's that?
It's 2110.
It ends up being
5 times. No, I'm saying 5 times 422 is.
Oh,
Yeah, I got 21.
thank you. Yeah, that because 10 carry the 1. You get 10, but you got the 1 that you carried, so that's 11. Thank you. Yeah. So little details, but important. Important. Good. So we plug that in, and let's see what that's going to give us. 2100 squared. And then we divide that by 10, and that's negative. And then we add 422 times 2110. I come up with 449,420.
I distributed the negative before I squared it, so I did it more.
Okay, yeah, so that negative, yeah, be careful.
You square first and then.
Yes, you have to square first. And that, yeah, that's a good thing because, yeah, when we have minus x squared, remember, order of operations say we square before we put a negative on it. Think of that negative as a -1, so we square before we multiply it. But that's another popular mistake to make, is thinking of this as, yes, as this, so then it becomes positive. Yeah, okay, so we should get a positive $449,420. Nice little income for a month, right? Of course, remember, that's just revenue. Doesn't count our costs being subtracted or anything, but does that make sense? Okay, so again, and this is being recorded, so it's there. Just as you work through this one, just recognize that basically they just changed the variables a bit, but not just changed the variables, they've reversed it. Instead of having this price gives you this quantity, they say this quantity is in a function and gives us this price. So that's why I worked it in the reverse order. And You won't have to change the order if you don't want to. I mean, you could just work it as is, but just remember the price times the quantity. So that's, you're going to take that function times x again, and that's how we get that x squared. And then you start to see, oh, an x squared is going to, and a negative x squared is going to have a maximum. So I can do it graphically, algebraically, finding that vertex. I can also take the derivative, find where it's 0, and then plug it back in. And again, if it's just now I'm getting confused. I think it's an open answer one. So we do want to see you actually take the derivative, not just say this is the value. And I did it with my calculator. We want to see you do the derivative, find that x value, and then plug it in. Now, when I say that, you don't necessarily have to show this work. But again, on those, it's actually better if you do, because if you made the mistake I did and you left off, you did 2100 instead of 2110, you're going to come up with the wrong value. But I would see that, oh, I see where the error was, and it's like 1/10 of a point off instead of a 0, So that's where showing the work really, and that's what I say is, it's not so much about being punitive of trying to punish you for not showing work, but by showing work, it's about rewarding what you're doing. Okay, I'm tired. Ready for another spring break. Can we have spring break next week? I wish. Questions, concerns? Okay. The other thing I'm going to recommend too, if you haven't finished some of the homework, this might be a good thing. Instead of going back and looking at the whole lecture, you're going to get have like mini 5-minute lectures over the whole thing, and that might help you with also getting through the homework. And again, because it's all about time, right? Because probably a few of you, this is your only class and you don't have anything else to do but just study brief calc, right? You got other things going on in your life. Heck, even I have other things in my life, but the main thing, I get paid for this, so it's my job, I'll do it. But focus on the highlighted ones. Hopefully get those done a little early so you could do maybe a few others, just because those will help fill in and build the confidence. But again, focusing on those, you're going to be just fine. But understand the concepts that are in there.
Are you posting an answer key to these, right?
Actually, it's already posted. I think. I said that.
I didn't know that, so I was just
Yeah. The video solutions are posted, and let's see, what am I doing here? Here we are. Let's close that. We don't need that. They should be there. Let's go back to if you go down to the test 2 review materials, so this is kind of where to focus. There's the view. Yeah, I think they're here. It should have been here. There's this is one. I think originally they had the answers in here, and that was making it hard to do, so I took them out. But maybe I don't have a version that they're actually there. But if you go into Exam 2 Brief Study Guide, let's see. Oh, I forgot about this. I've also got some, doesn't look like it's all that helpful. Maybe it is. I think, yeah, they'll be here, and then what I've gotten is up here, the solutions. So they're not just the answer, but they're me working through them. If you do go to the
one with the answers is posted.
yeah, the one that's the new one, new but similar test. Again, the numbering's a little off. There is actually the answers here, so you could also, the numbers will be a little bit. You'll see the same questions, and what's helpful here is these are all just answers. I thought that let's see if they do provide a little bit of explanation, so those are there. Yeah. So again, I try to provide more than, resources than you really maybe need, but you have to select which ones work best for you. So again, yes.
Do you have the highlighted one first too?
Yes, that is, maybe I should highlight which one is highlighted, because sometimes you get too many things, and I try not to do that either. So let's see, the test 2 review, so that's, it's not here. I put it as tonight's summary. So if you go, because up in, basically these are by class date, so 316, what you're going to see there is this, and that's also where I'll post this video the screen capture I've been doing. This is the highlighted one. So yeah, it's kind of, it makes sense when I do them, but then yeah, even I forget where I put everything, and so it's all there. Just making sure you find. So that's your highlighted one. Again, at least do that much, and if you can do a little bit more, it's just going to build your confidence. But spend your time to do well in those, and just remember, basically, chapter 11 is skills. Get those down, because everything else is, the other sections are applications of those skills. And there's some mini reviews in there, again, for each of the sections. And again, sometimes it helps because, you've seen the whole thing, but now if you get it down. And it's one of those things as you work through it again and again, each time, each cycle you go through, you get a little bit more insight. And I always say you got to do things 3 times. So one time, sometimes you need some help, you get through it, struggle through it. Second time, you start to see it, but a lot of times you might get the right answer, but if you stop there, you've lost that third time of doing it where you actually feel really confident going, okay, now it really makes sense. And sometimes maybe it's a 4th or 5th time later, but when you get to that level where it's, hey, I really feel good about this, that's where you'll get to. Again, we can't get there with everything maybe, but the closer you get, the better it'll be. Sound good? All right, what time is it? Got over half an hour if you want. If you have no specific questions, you're welcome to hang out and work on things if you'd like. I'll be here until the last person leaves. The captain, I'll go down with the ship, and when you let me leave, I'll go home. And have a good weekend. We'll come back Tuesday and we'll just do this.